And TGIF, everybody. Welcome into the First Call podcast. We're going to get set for some handicapping. Alongside my guest handicapper, Scott Shapiro, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Hope to have Jeff Siegel back in the fold with us very soon. Now, Scott, I am one for omens. I will admit this. I hit Pandora this morning. First song that came up was Hit Me With Your Best Shot. So the pressure's on you, man. You've got to come out swinging here on the podcast.
Wow, Scott Shapiro and Pat Benatar, not the analogy I expected this morning. But yeah, we have the three big Derby preps coming up of 100 points to the winners. Obviously, we'll talk about it. Two of them will be on Saturday now. Of course, with the Santa Anita Derby being the big one. Wood Memorial, obviously big as well. But really looking forward to seeing how Citizen Bull Barnes stack up against journalism, who I know you've been high on for a while. And a lot of us have jumped on board.
Well, he probably the leader right now in terms of Kentucky Derby favoritism. He was in the last future wager, and there is a Kentucky Derby future wager as well that ends before the big preps on Saturday. We offer that with First Bet and Express Bet. So if you want to get in on a Kentucky Derby play, you got another 24 hours or so to do so until Saturday afternoon. We record our podcast each and every Friday. We're happy you're with us. We put out 8 stakes picks each and every weekend. We're going to go a little extra. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bluegrass Stakes on this program as well. For those of you watching on YouTube and on X, we appreciate that. Hope you like and share this out and comment in the comments section. For those of you on our traditional audio channels, I'll run through the lineup that Scott and I are about to handicap here over the next half hour or so. We're going to start things out with the Dubai World Cup from Maidan. Big card there in the Middle East, beginning at 8:35 a.m. Eastern on Saturday morning. Dubai World Cup set for 1:30 p.m. Eastern here, U.S. time. We'll talk about the World Cup in our handicapping. To Santa Anita, where it is Santa Anita Derby Day. Huge racing card there. 3 graded stakes. We'll handicap them. The Santa Anita Oaks, the Monrovia, and then the big one, the Santa Anita Derby, with 3 of maybe the top 4, 5, 6 prospects right now for the Kentucky Derby. To Aqueduct, we'll go for their big day of the spring meet. At Aqueduct, they run the Wood Memorial on Saturday. The undercard includes the Gazelle, the Carter, the Excelsior, and then the main event, the Wood Memorial, will be our 8th and final handicapping destination for Saturday. We'll also look ahead to Tuesday at the Bluegrass Stakes. Keeneland Racecourse canceling opening day, postponing opening day here on Friday. Torrential rains in Kentucky. So the Kentucky racing calendar, a little bit askew right now. No racing Friday and Saturday at Keeneland. They hope to get their opening day off on Sunday. Of course, the Sunday card was already drawn at the time of the postponement. So it was the 3rd card in the sequence, but it will actually go as opening day. The original opening day card Friday gets moved to Monday. The Saturday card goes to Tuesday. So we're going to have Monday racing with the Ashland Stakes at Keeneland for Kentucky Oaks prospects. And then the Derby prospects get their shot on Tuesday. It's like what's the big race? The race that stops a nation in Australia on a Tuesday. This is like what in the world? I'm drawing a blank on
that
the
race. I can't think of the name of that race either, but I don't know how much I knew it.
Melbourne Cup, for crying out loud.
There you go.
I came up with Pat Benatar this morning and not the Melbourne Cup. This is what happens to an older mind as you get foggy and through the process. But we'll talk about the race at Keeneland a little bit too towards the end of the podcast. So let's start things off talking about the racing in Dubai. We mentioned 8:35 a.m. Eastern, the first race on the program from Dubai. Big stakes, but not a big American presence this year in Dubai, Scott. We do have the Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, Straight No Chaser. He's running in the Dubai Golden Shaheen. The Golden Shaheen is race number 6 on the card, about 11:40 a.m. to see that one if you're looking to play throughout the card. All the races are able to be watched and wagered upon with First Bet and Express Bet. The UAE Derby on the undercard. No big superstars in the UAE Derby this year, but we do have Flood Zone, the winner of the Gotham Stakes for Brad Cox, trying to go from the 1/3 mile to the mile and 3/16 against a Japanese contingent in there. But let's focus your handicapping on the big one, the main event, the Dubai World Cup. Again, that will be race number 9 of 9 on the card. 1.25 miles. They've been running the Dubai World Cup almost 30 years. I remember watching in the morning Cigar and Soul of the Matter coming down the stretch. I was in the racing office at Remington Park doing the morning notes and hopped over there to watch the Dubai World Cup in the racing office TVs. That was in the beginning years. The race has evolved a lot over the years, and this year is one of the weaker U.S. presence I can remember in the 3 decades of the Dubai World Cup.
Yeah, my biggest memory of the Dubai World Cup is Dubai Millennium running off the screen that
Mm.
year. I don't know why. It just happened to be one that I remember exactly where I was when it happened. But yeah, in terms of Americans over there, and the whole card, but the Dubai World Cup as well, a little bit underwhelming. You combine that with the fact that I think we might have the best horse in the world in the race, the Japanese Forever Young, or certainly amongst those. And the fact that he's tactical, he can work out his own trip. He doesn't need a big setup. If he gets it, it's not going to hurt him. It just looks to me maybe a trend here of not being tough to get overly creative in some of these stakes races this Saturday. They're big races. But to me, this is Forever Young and everybody else, JP.
Yeah, look, the Japanese have a strong hand to play in here. Of course, Wilson Tesoro, Ushba Tesoro. We've seen them in a lot of the big races around the world. There's no local influence in here either. So as I'm kind of raining on the Americans not entering superstars in this race, the locals aren't entering anybody, which is really weird for the Dubai World Cup as well. You're used to seeing a couple good Godolphin horses and some local horses. You've got some that are like leased out the sheiks in Dubai to run, but they're not really their horses. This is a weak cast from the home team, so it really does set up for the Japanese to run roughshod. And they've kind of had their hand in the international mix for the last 3-4 years in such a powerful way as it is. I don't know. Maybe they're, exerting their influence on the other circuits. But for the Americans who are going, let our fans know we've got Hit Show in there. Il Miracolo, of course, Florida-based. Hit Show, fairgrounds-based horse for Brad Cox, based in Kentucky as well. Mixto out of California for Doug O'Neill. So, he'll try to go from the west to the far east or the Middle East. And then Katona also for Doug O'Neill going to the Middle East. And the other one is Kenny McPeak, the Kentucky based Rattle and Roll, coming off a good fifth place finish really in the Saudi Cup last time out. And then, of course, 2 starts back, he was the winner of the Clark Handicap at Churchill Downs, or 3 starts back. So he's had a couple runs in the Middle East. He got a prep in Saudi Arabia before running in the Saudi Cup, and then ran a decent race in the Saudi Cup. And that's the race we really want to focus on for handicapping here for the UAE Derby, because it featured Forever Young. And what a showdown he had there with the Hong Kong superstar Romantic Warrior. Let's go back to the Saudi Cup. Forever Young getting one of the biggest wins of his career.
From Forever Young in second place, the 2 of them are clear from Wilson Tesoro and Factor Cheval, 2 of the great racehorses in the world. And at the moment, Romantic Warrior holds sway. His rider looks across. Forever Young is trying to close, and he's beginning to do so. Romantic Warrior from the outside. Forever Young has got to within 3 parts of a length. Romantic Warrior, Forever Young, a race for the ages, and Forever Young rounds off a terrific night for Japan. Runs down Romantic Warrior.
It'd be hard to make that one up that race in terms of maybe race of the year, and that was early in February. But can Forever Young come back with an even better performance? I don't think he'll have to, because I don't think there are any Romantic Warriors in here, Scott. This, like you said, absolutely his race to lose.
That's the thing, you try to look around and get creative. You've got the Japanese Ushba Tesoro, who makes some sense, and Walk of Stars, but I just don't think these horses are at the same level of a horse. Look how, Romantic Warrior's a monster. Look how far, you saw how far back it was for third there. I agree with you. The American contingent, maybe some pick up the pieces type horses at best. But to me, if Forever Young loses this races, it'll be one of the bigger surprises of the year thus far in thoroughbred racing.
The other thing, too, is I think if you're going to beat Forever Young, you just do it with a brilliant run. We saw Laurel River last year in this race. If I woke up, just run off the screen. There's no speed in here amongst the American horses. Right. If there was a really good American speed horse in here, you'd say maybe that's the one. And you just turn in a brilliant performance. They pop, and Forever Young kind of, takes a little regression back off his last race and gets beat. But there's no speed in here to kind of pop it. So I'm not even sure where it comes from. The American horses, really, I don't see any of them just kind of going out there gangbusters. And so it's all in the hands of Forever Young, and we'll see if the Yoshida Yahagi trainee can do it again. He's only got a couple more starts left in his career, the way it sounds. He's already racked up some big-time cash. Can't imagine where his earnings will go if he takes home the Dubai World Cup on top of things here. $12 million main event coming up Saturday at Meydan. Again, 8:35 a.m. first post time from Dubai, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for race number 9, the $12 million Dubai World Cup. Also on the undercard, forgot to mention Romantic Warrior, the horse who was beaten in that Saudi Cup race. He is going to run back on the turf. He's going in the Dubai turf. That'll be race number 7, $5 million race. He'll be a heavy favorite in there. So you could be a favorite for $5 million, or you could be the second choice for 12. They're getting back to the grass with Romantic Warrior, part of a star-studded undercard on Dubai World Cup Day. Let's talk about Santa Anita now on Saturday. Before we get to Saturday's card, we've got a Pick 6 carryover today at Santa Anita as we record and release our podcast each and every Friday. $100,000 in the Pick 6 carryover, traditional $2 Pick 6 at Santa Anita. Carryover today at Santa Anita. Frank Carulli has you covered on that in the blog section at expressbet.com. Our Fridays with Frank series takes a look at all of the Pick 6 races at Santa Anita, so be sure to check that out. News.first.com and the ExpressBet blog section has Frank's analysis for today's Pick 6 at Santa Anita. All right, let's go to the Saturday card at Santa Anita, where we want to remind you there is a 5 million point hit and split on the multi-race wagers on Saturday at Santa Anita. That's talking about the early pick 5 with $1 million first reward points hit and split, $2 million in that early pick 5. In the late pick 5, another $2 million in the first rewards hit and split. And then the middle pick 4 is $1 million. So $5 million first rewards points are up for a grab Saturday at Santa Anita. We're going to handicap the Santa Anita Oaks, the Monrovia, and the Santa Anita Derby. And if you need help with that hit and split, our guy there, Scott, he's got you covered for the late pick 5 on Saturday at Santa Anita. He's got the blog set up. We're going to pick his brain on a couple of the races here at Santa Anita on Saturday, starting in the Santa Anita Oaks, race number 4. Scott Tenma's the horse to beat in here, no question, coming off the big win in Las Virgenes. She was in the Starlet Stakes against several of these horses too, so it's a familiar cast for her. Is there anything standing in her way to an Oaks title?
It's hard to find a scenario where Tenma does not beat this field. You look to that effort in the Starlet, and she wasn't favored. Instead, it was her rival in here, Vodka with a Twist, who disappointed in that race as the 7-5 top choice. Vodka with a Twist has not been seen since, and Tenma rattled off a monster win in the Las Virgenes, as you mentioned, after that, and just comes into this race by far the fastest horse, steady work pattern for Bob Baffert, and the tactical speed that she possesses with whatever draw probably doesn't matter, but the 4-hole should allow her to work out whatever trip she needs to. So for me, Tenma will probably be significantly shorter than this even money listed on the morning line, and another very tough customer in the stakes race on Saturday.
Yeah, she rematches with Look Forward. She rematches with Vodka with a Twist. Let's go back to that Starlet. Michael Rono with the call and see Tenma in action this winter.
Homeward bound in the Starlet with a quarter mile to go, and Tenma shaken up by Hernandez. On the inside, Look Forward not done with. Tenma, Look Forward with 3/16 to go. Tenma takes a head lead. Look Forward is gallant on her inside. They're about 8 lengths clear of the rest. Vodka with a Twist is third. It's Look Forward on the inside, and Tenma fighting it out tooth and nail. Tenma in the ascendancy late. Tenma stretching clear, and Tenma takes the Starlet from a very game Look Forward. 7 lengths in front of Vodka with a Twist, with Mawu finishing 4th.
Now, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner last year, Immersive's been sidelined. We haven't seen her all year, but Brad Cox has good cheer, undefeated. I believe, 7 for 7 now, or 6 for 6. The winner of the Fairgrounds Oaks. She's probably the solid favorite in the Kentucky Oaks, but Tenma could take her spot as the second choice in the Kentucky Oaks lineup, probably with a victory here. Vodka with a Twist. Let's talk about her for just a moment. She was second in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies last year to Immersive, but she was an early 2-year-old. She was running in the baby dashes at Keeneland in the spring. I'm kind of shocked she was as good as she was later in the year. She seemed like a early developer, a win early type 2-year-old. They had to stop on her after the Starlet. I really don't know what kind of 3-year-old filly she's going to be. If she's good, it'll be a surprise to me. This feels like one who we've seen the best of her as a 2-year-old, but if Phil D'Amato gets a good 3-year-old campaign out of her, hats off to him, because she was hard to race last year.
Absolutely. You very few times see those races, those early baby 2-year-old horses. Even the Wesley Wards that run off the screen at Keeneland end up moving forward significantly into that 2-year-old campaign. And again, as a 3-year-old, the time off might help, but I wish I had another view or more, to differ or to argue with you. But these are the kinds of fillies I see the same way. Early developers. In fact, I might even try to beat her for second if that's a very chalky exacta, because I don't think she has to be second.
Now, Look Forward in here was entered back in the Ashland at Keeneland. I believe she's going to scratch the run in the race at Keeneland, but with that rescheduled for Monday, Michael McCarthy has obviously some decisions to make there. Let's go to the fifth race on the card. So, look, if you're trying to bet intra-race on 10, it's probably not the best move. I think a multi-race wager, singling her is the way to go. We also have a stakes in the fifth, the Monrovia. Maybe you could double up and look at a potential daily double play. But as we get to race number 5, the Monrovia Stakes, which is our express bet race of the week, I don't think the favorite's going to be any easier to defeat in this race. I think that Queen Maxima is going to be awfully tough in here. She's a no short of winning her last 4 starts. She's won 3 in a row, including the Wishing Well Stakes last time out. If she runs back to that race, she's going to be awfully tough.
Stay and Scam, her stablemate, tracking second. Then Queen Maxima, who's in the clear now, while third, angling off the rail now. And she's joined by Miss Roberts, widest of all. Lolna is next there at the top of the stretch. Ma Ray's Girl, 2-length lead. Queen Maxima starts to extend that beautiful stride of hers, though, and it's lights out. Ma Ray's Girl and none of the others will come close to Queen Maxima, just stamping them out and winning by almost 4 lengths.
She's been awesome sprinting on the turf. Jeff Mullins, her trainer. Get these stats. I looked up in the PetMix database. Downhill turf sprints at the current Santa Anita meet, which began, of course, the day after Christmas. 12 turf sprint starts for Jeff Mullins. 4 wins, 6 second-place finishes. 10 for 12 in the exacta with his downhill turf sprinters this meet. I can't imagine Queen Maxima is not part of the exacta, and more than likely the top half of that exacta, Scott.
Without question, I did, take a stand against her in terms of these picks. I won't be taking a major stand against her at the windows. Just wanted to try to get a little creative. And I thought the way to maybe beat her was with a fresh horse, maybe getting the jump on her. There's not a lot of speed in here if you look around.
Right.
Omaha Girl is speed, but she's coming out of 1.25 mile races. When she did run down the hill last time, she was prominent early, but that was before all the 1.25 mile and 1/8 races. There's a chance her speed is a lot less sharp than it was in those races. And then if you exclude her, I think there's a chance Queen of the Mud could end up on the lead because she's coming off the layoff, maybe a little bit more keen in her 5-year-old debut than what the running lines will show. And she does have some tactical speed. But I think it's at best a 2-horse race between Queen of the Mud and Queen Maxima. I just went with a filly or a mare in this case. It's going to be a lot better price.
So you're saying it's going to be hard to beat a pair of queens in the Monrovia Stakes. I agree with you on that. One of my favorite handicapping angles with Queen of the Mud, I call it the LTB, lay off, turn back, and bullets. Laying off, they're fresh horses. They're turning back in distance, and usually that means they're going to be a little fresher coming off the layoff, and they're firing bullets in the morning, so they're sharp. She should be sharp enough to go 6.5 furlongs. Queen of the Mud, Umberto Rispoli, looking for back-to-back wins in this race. He won it with AG Bullet a year ago in the Monrovia. That's our express bet race of the week, and it's race number 6 on the card on Santa Anita Derby Day. Let's go to the main event at the Great Race Place on Saturday. 1 1/8 for $500,000. Grade 1, and there are 75% of the Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line because of the rules from Churchill Downs stating fields of 5 get 75% of the allotted points. So it used to be 100 points to the winner for this race. It'll now be 75. Second will get 37.5. I can't do the math all the way down to the other ones. 18 something and such down the line. So if you run third in this race, you could be in some jeopardy of making the Kentucky Derby field with the reduced points. A horse like Barnes finishing third in here with the San Felipe runner-up, the only thing on his resume, because remember, the San Vicente win that he had was not worth any Kentucky Derby qualifying points because it was a one-turn race. So if Barnes runs third in this race, he probably won't have the points to make the Kentucky Derby. But you could argue, Scott, that if he finishes third in here and the way he's kind of gone in the mornings in recent weeks, that he's probably not headed to the Derby anyway. What's your take on Barnes going into this race before we try to figure out which horse we like to win it? Give me your thoughts on Barnes and where he might be.
Well, I think I agree overall that there's questions to be answered. You're a little bit stronger, in my opinion, at, watching the works in the mornings. I've gotten better and better at it over the years, but I give you the nod there. But to me, I think he might get overlooked in the wagering with Journalism and Citizen Bull being, the main event, the main two. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about Barnes.
Right.
And for that reason, I find it a little interesting, and I can make a pretty good case that it's only his second start going 2 turns. His first start, if Journalism's a monster, he's probably not going to beat him here either. But If you look at the late pace rating on Briz and just watch the race, I don't necessarily think Barnes was stopping. I just think Journalism was finishing that well and striding out
Yeah.
that nicely. So I think maybe we're looking at a horse that was 2-5 right last time. Lost to one horse in the race. It was his first start at 2 turns. Maybe we're overreacting a little bit. At least what I'm looking at on paper. If he's regressing in the mornings, that's a different question or answer.
What do you think third choice in this race? Obviously Westwood's not going to get bet at all. Beza will take a little bit of money, but you've got Journalism, Citizen Bull, the 1-2 favorites in here, and probably Barnes ends up the third choice. What do you think's a fair number on?
A fair number, I think, would be a number that I would start to consider betting them. I don't have them as my top pick, but 4-1. But I think that would be a fair number, one that I would really consider, because that would probably mean Journalism is lower than I think even he should be, and Citizen Bull. But I think he'll probably end up more in the 7-2, 3-1 range.
Yeah, that's what I think. He'll be around 3-1, and I'm not sure. I don't know if I'd want to take the gamble on him at 3-1, but he's been 34 cents on the dollar, even money, and 40 cents on the dollar in his 3 starts. 3-1 may not look so bad. And he is the horse who needs it, right? I mean, like, Journalism's got the points. He's good. He's got almost 50. Anywhere he hits on the board, he's going to be well up in the comfort zone. Citizen Bull's already got plenty of points to qualify. He's set to go. The horse who needs the race in terms of getting to the Derby is Barnes. Baffert's had him working in the morning with Cornucopian, who outworked him, and then Cornucopian went and blazed up the racetrack at Oaklawn Park last time and kind of ended up throwing out the anchor a little bit after ridiculous splits there. But I think the works against Cornucopian, and then the last workout, they put him in company with kind of a tomato can to give him a chance just to get his confidence back. They set Barnes about 4 lengths behind the workmate in that one and let him kind of come after the horse and blow by him nicely. But is that the style they're going to try to employ here? Are they going to sit with Barnes and go with Citizen Bull? That's what it sounded like in Baffert's quotes that I read in the racing press in recent days, that it's Citizen Bull we're not messing with. He's going to the front. They think that he's faster than Barnes, and Barnes will sit in here. So I don't know. Can Barnes track, sit, and go by Citizen Bull? And can he hold off Journalism? That's the kind of the way the race shape sets up, unless we've got something here in Beza that we're not giving enough talk to. So again, before we get to the 2 main players in here, Journalism and Citizen Bull, let's talk Beza for just a minute in the Santa Anita Derby. Of course, he's by McKenzie out of Puka. What a great mare Puka has turned out to be. She had the Kentucky Derby winner Mage 2 years ago. She had the Belmont winner Dornick last year. She's looking for a 3rd straight major, if you will. Grade 1 winning 3-year-old as a broodmare. What do you make of Beza, 3rd start winner at a mile last time out?
He's a horse that has a lot of upside. The sales price is what it is because, maybe in large part because of the success of Puka before this, but, clearly was well meant, when they bought this horse, looked the part to an extent. And ever since, clearly was John Sheriff's wins at like 4% first out. So clearly a prep at Del Mar on the side that first out, not worried, but take an interesting amount of money in an 11-horse field considering those numbers. The blinkers go on, he moves him to the dirt, and he's run 2 bang-up races. My problem is, he lost by 7 lengths to Rodriguez. There might be reasons for that. Rodriguez was a little bit further along. But where does that stack him up against the better Bobs in here? Rodriguez was chipped out. He couldn't, necessarily keep up with Barnes and the Citizen Bulls of the world in California. That's the concern. But with John Sheriff's, the upside is always there to move forward because he's in it for the long haul. He's not pressing on these horses right away. So I would probably need 6-1 or more to get any sort of excitement on this horse because I do think we're dealing with some serious runners here. But that said, this is a horse that has some serious upside as well.
He pressed in second, a half length off the lead in 46-4 last time going the mile. Is he going to be quick enough to make it at least be a gnat in the pace scenario for Citizen Bull? That's kind of the question, because if they decide they're not going to attack with Barnes and it's another Baffert orchestra, which we've seen in almost every prep race this year in Southern California, there have been 2, 3, 4 Bafferts in there, and they could just dictate the pace and let their runners do what they wanted to do. Is Beza fast enough to go up there and just say, look, we're not going to play that way? I don't think they're going to do that with Journalism, because I think they're confident in what worked in the San Felipe, which was to just sit, come, and go by Barnes. So I don't think Journalism's going to get up into the mix too soon. Beza would be the one horse who could make life a little bit difficult on Citizen Bull if he's fast enough. Do you think he's fast enough?
I don't, and I don't necessarily think John Sheriff's, he might have it in him somewhere, but I don't necessarily think John Sheriff's trains his horses for speed. And I just can't imagine. I guess if he gets second, he's in. Third, he's probably not, right? And in this race,
Right.
or maybe. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess if he's all in to make the Derby, he's got to be aggressive in this race and not sit back to pick up pieces. But I just can't imagine the game plan with a rider like Hector Berrios, who's best on the turf, best at settling horses and finishing. That doesn't answer all your question, but I feel like it gives us, you combine that with the fact that there's a good chance he might not be as fast as a horse like Citizen Bull when all is said and done.
We'll find out with Beza. Now, Citizen Bull will make the lead in here. We feel pretty confident about that. Why? Because he made the lead in the American Pharoah, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and the Bob Lewis last time. Going wire to wire in all three. He hasn't seen the backside of another horse in any one of those two-turn route races. It was a little bit of an anxious moment right out of the gate in the Bob Lewis, though. He did bobble at the start, but then he picked himself up, went right to the front. But he didn't run off after bobbling at the start. And I thought that was a good sign because a lot of times the horse's adrenaline kicks in after a stumbling start. And when they go, they just go. He actually came back and was really calm and collected for jockey Martin Garcia and actually got the half in 47 that day. A lot of times once a horse gets that energy going and the fear factor, and after that stumble, no way you're going to get him to throttle down and run 47. That was probably his most professional of the three wins. Competition gets tougher in this particular spot, though. Rodriguez on the road, Matticat rode the third place finisher in that race, went and ran fourth last week in the Florida Derby in a decent but not spectacular effort by any stretch. So it gets a lot tougher in here for Citizen Bull. He's the 2-year-old champ. He's won 3 in a row. He's really done nothing wrong in his career. He's won 4 of 5 races. Yet I don't see a lot of people lining up to coronate him as the main event player for the Kentucky Derby. Scott, what do you say?
I'm amongst those, Jeremy. And, maybe it's unfair because he's done it 4 of 5 times with very little going wrong. But when I look at those races that you mentioned, there's 2 things that pretty much stick out in all of them. You look back at the fields that he beat, and they didn't come back as strong as maybe we would have liked, including the Breeders' Cup, including the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And then he's had things so easy in his races. I know last time, like you said, he definitely overcame a little bit of adversity early, and he showed he's a pro, but he didn't get pressed at all on the front end. And we might see the similar thing again. And it could be a situation where Citizen Bull wires out another field with an easy lead, and he becomes a great fade come Kentucky Derby time. But for me, I think he's going to be a little bit shorter than I'd be willing to take in this race, given what I just mentioned.
When you're thinking about your Derby horses and you read rankings from various handicappers and things like that, it's good fodder. It's good for weekly discussion. But to me, rankings are kind of a combination of resume, what have you done, and projection of like, how good do you think somebody could be for a Kentucky Derby? I've got Citizen Bull ranked second behind Journalism in my countdown to the Crown rankings, mainly because of the former, the resume, what he's done. And look, he's knocked out everybody who's been there. The West Coast has been pretty good, I think, this year. He's 3 for 3 from the West Coast. He won the Juvenile last year. But part of me says there's no way he's the second best horse going into the Kentucky Derby as well. And maybe some of that gets exposed here as we stretch out to the 1 1/8. Remember, just a mile in the Bob Lewis. So he's going from a mile to a 1 1/8. He's only had 1 start this year. So since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he's gone a grand total of 1 mile and now has to go a 1 1/8 against, no doubt, the strongest horse he has faced to date in Journalism. Why do we say that? Let's go back to the San Felipe, where it was Barnes who had everything his way. We talk about halves in 47. Barnes got it in 47 and 1. And watch what Journalism did to him.
Journalism now swings into action on the outside. These are the 2 as they come to the 8th pole. Barnes in front by 3. Journalism chasing with determination, getting closer with every stride. And here comes Journalism right on by Barnes. And it will be Journalism striding away powerfully to win the DK Horse San Felipe Stakes. Barnes.
If he repeats that effort, he's going to go to Kentucky as the favorite for this year's Kentucky Derby. No question in my mind. He was the favorite in the Kentucky Derby future wager, so there's already precedent of money being exchanged that tells you he would be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, not just speculation. Scott, anything short of that, a second or third place finish in this race, could turn out to be a good thing for people who like him in the Kentucky Derby. It'll certainly raise his price in Louisville, but will you be worried about him if he runs second or third in here in terms of what it means for the Kentucky Derby?
It's a great question, and I think, I have to put a caveat in there because I think if he gets wired out in a similar race like Citizen Bull has run in, or let's just say Barnes wires him out because they allow Barnes to set the lone speed tempo, I will not be worried at all. You're also looking at how the track played that day, whatever.
Mhm.
If he just runs a flat second, because that was a really big step forward last time.
Yeah.
So to me, as a more of a numbers guy than you, I think is pretty unarguable. I would say it depends how much he regresses off of the race. But overall, I'm not going to be concerned with journalism unless he puts in a real dud. And to your point, I might be wishing that he runs second to Citizen Bull here, even by 3 in a wire-to-wire fashion come first Saturday in May, not come the first Saturday in April.
It'd be very interesting. I think the winner of the Santa Anita Derby goes favored in the Kentucky Derby. I think whoever that, if it's Citizen Bull, he'll be the Derby favorite. If it's Barnes, he would be the Kentucky Derby favorite. If it's journalism, he'll be the Kentucky Derby favorite. Because I don't see Tappan Street coming out of Florida becoming the favorite. No way, Sandman. The Louisiana horses were upsets in that. Nobody out of the wood could possibly be the Kentucky Derby favorite. Maybe somebody spectacular in the Bluegrass could get favoritism in the Kentucky Derby. But right now, to me, the 3 most logical favorites in the Kentucky Derby are all running against each other on Saturday. The winner of that race probably carries the torch to Louisville as the chalk for the Kentucky Derby. There's not a superstar out of Japan. Luxor Cafe looks good, but he doesn't have that international resume already like the horses who went Forever Young last year going to UAE and such. They're not going to bet Luxor Cafe with both hands in the Kentucky Derby. So to me, it comes through Santa Anita, Derby favoritism this Saturday.
I agree with that sentiment. I don't see any scenario where the Bluegrass winner can trump the winner of this race. The only scenario I could see is if journalism, to trump your point, would be is if Citizen Bull gets an easy lead and journalism just misses coming after him. I could see a scenario where with the buzz of journalism, the pedigree, the pace factor, I could see a scenario where maybe he goes off the slight favorite.
Yeah, that would make for a great Kentucky Derby in terms of prices for everybody. To have a vulnerable favorite going into the Kentucky Derby is a beautiful tote board. So we shall see. Now, if journalism comes and wins by 3 lengths, he'll be a solid favorite in the Kentucky Derby and be in that 5-2, 3-1 range. And we won't be looking at one of those 9-2, 5-1 kind of Derby favorites like we get some years. Okay, let's switch gears now from Santa Anita on Saturday. Again, one final reminder: we've got a 5 million point hit and split in the pick 5, the pick 4 in the middle, and then the late pick 5. So 5 million point split coming up Saturday. First reward points. Be sure to opt in the promos when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet to take advantage of all of those extra bonuses. Okay, now let's go to Aqueduct on Saturday for Wood Memorial Day. A lot of rain in the Midwest. I think they're going to get away with an okay day at Aqueduct on Saturday. The track could come up a little bit wet. Right now, I live in the Northeast. I think we're safe of rain for today, but maybe we'll get a little bit of rain tomorrow. So we'll see what kind of track conditions we get for Wood Memorial Day. Scott, let's start things off in the Gazelle in race number 9. This is a Kentucky Oaks points prep here. $200,000, mile and an eighth, same distance as the Wood Memorial. So I like when we have good stakes races at the same distance on the card on these Derby prep days. Gives us a chance to kind of compare and contrast sometimes. So we'll see how well they go in the Gazelle and how well they go in the Wood Memorial and have a little something to compare. This doesn't look like the strongest of the Oaks preps, though, that we've seen this year. What we saw last week with Quiet Side in the Fantasy, and 2 weeks ago with Good Cheer in New Orleans, and then, of course, with Tenma in Southern California, I can't imagine that the Gazelle is going to give us anybody for the Kentucky Oaks who's beyond the 4th or 5th choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think Good Cheer has separated herself. We'll see what happens this weekend, of course, out in California, and then with the Ashland on Monday.
Right.
That said, I think Ballerina Dioro is the only one that has any chance at all to put herself, in that next tier of horses. This is a filly that Chad Brown has been high on throughout the year. She ran well in the Demoiselle, and if again, the late pace rating, something Jeremy and I both like looking at. Brisnet, strong 105, splitting the 2 speeds, which is something I like. That was not a race that set things up for her, with Mohima, the inside speed wiring out the field. And then you only see the March 1st race here than Devona Dale, but she was scratched out of the Rachel Alexandra. And, Chad Brown's been through a lot of scratches in his career. You wouldn't think a Rachel Alexander scratch would make him upset, but it did really feel like he thought she was sitting on a big race and maybe had a chance to spring the upset of Good Cheer there. Didn't get to run, lost a little time, and then brought back in a one-turn mile race, which I'm going to be very forgiving of, where she ran third to the Queen's MG.
Yeah, let's go back and take a look at Ballerina Doro's comeback race in March. It was the Grade 2 Devona Dale at that mile trip.
The rail opened for the Queen's MG, but LaCara just took the lead. Racing into third is Ballerina Doro, but she needs to giddy up from there as these top two start to sprint. They're a quarter of a mile from home, and LaCara has the lead. With inside position, the Queen's MG is right alongside. They're into the drive in the Devona Dale, and we're set for a good matchup. LaCara tries to turn back the Queen's MG, but the Queen's MG has made a clear lead. LaCara is back to second and tries to hold there, but the winner of the Devona Dale is the Queen's MG. And Irad Ortiz Jr. by 2.5. It ended up.
Queen's MG, of course, came back and was injured in the Gulfstream Park Oaks, a race won by 5G. 5G, one of the contenders for this year's Kentucky Oaks coming out of that Gulfstream series. We'll see if Ballerina can add her name to the Gulfstream alumni headed towards the Kentucky Oaks when she takes flight in the Gazelle Stakes. You got a couple big barns with some horses who are stepping up in class. Shug's got one, Pure Beauty stepping up. Todd's got one coming off a big win by 15 at Aqueduct named Vanilla Sunday. Was a third start maiden breaker. That was her first start of the year. We'll see how good she might be. That was with Lasix. She doesn't get Lasix for the stakes race. So a lot of question marks. You have the horse who's probably the most form solidified of the group in here. The others really are in a proving ground situation to see how good they are. Ballerina Doro, Scott's top pick in the Gazelle, race number 9. If you're looking to pair that one up, maybe look for a daily double play, parlay race 9 into race number 10, where we get to the Carter Stakes. The Carter, grade 2 here, 7 furlongs. This is the main local prep towards the Met Mile. The Carter used to be a standalone top-notch sprint race, grade 1 company. It's now a grade 2 for $300,000, and this is a very weak edition of the Carter. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be competitive and good for gambling. I'll be very curious to see what Quince Brew's able to do in here, a horse who Jeff loved going into the General George. I remember on the podcast, Ned Allard trains Quince Brew. This is a horse who's been so visually impressive in the last couple. And I remember after that race saying Quince Brew might be this year's version of Post Time, a horse out of Maryland who's really visually impressive and is going to get a chance to run in one of these big races in New York. Post Time went on to have a great year last year for Brittany Russell, ran in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and got a check in that as well. Quince Brew, they're not wasting any time to take the Post Time path. They're going to the Carter in here. I kind of think he's got a shot in this particular spot. Michael Sanchez, Parks-based rider, will be along for the ride. But you've got yourself a horse who is also very visually impressive. Tell us about Crazy Mason, your top pick here in the Carter.
Yes, you wouldn't think normally, a $27,000 son of Cole Front would be my top pick in a grade 2 race. And he has not kept as good a company as some of his rivals in here, but he has been a different horse over the last couple of starts for trainer Greg Sacco. Now, the Lasix, you could argue, might be a part of it. He will not get the anti-bleeding medication today. But it's his third start of the form cycle, and we talk late pace ratings here a lot from Briz. 114 last time, and I don't think you needed the number to prove it to you, right? I mean, tremendous late turn of foot. He'll have to do it against better here, but he's coming in the race the right way.
You might say, I wonder what a 114 late pace rating looks like. Here you go.
To have some run in behind Toxic Gray as they reach the top of the stretch. Toxic Gray now kicks for home, spun in one, wants off the rail to chase, and Victory Way is still holding that spot. Toxic Gray is very game. Room at the rail for spun in one, maybe from way out of it. Crazy Mason is launching a huge run. Look at Crazy Mason, grandstand side. Crazy Mason from last to first. Wow. Sacco with a triple. Crazy Mason wins it. Photo there for
the other 3 horses that he blew by all stayed the same. So it's not like they came back. Sometimes you'll get fooled by like a big close like that the leader just stops. All 3 are going battling, and all of a sudden it's just another horse jumping in at the 8th pole. A big effort there from Crazy Mason. We'll see if he can repeat it. Quince Brew, Crazy Mason, 2 of the horses I think you definitely want to watch here in this race. Full Moon Madness coming off a win in the Tom Fool. He stays in that series of races in New York in the sprint for the winter. He was 3rd in the Toboggan. He's a horse who's going against Maximus Meridius a couple times. Maximus Meridius coming up from Parks for Butch Reed. So you got a couple of the winter warriors who have been in these stakes races, Maximus Meridius, Full Moon Madness. But I kind of like those fresh faces to the stakes scene. Your horse, Crazy Mason, Quince Brew coming up from Maryland. Let's just do a 1-2 exacta box in here in the Carter Stakes and see what we can't cash into race number 10. If you're looking again to continue with some rolling doubles, we'll go to the 11th race on Saturday at the Big A. It's the Excelsior. This is a 1.25 miles on the main track, the classic distance of 1.25 miles. Horse in here, Krupe, is one who has been running in some of the bigger races around the country. You might think Krupe would have gotten a shot to the Dubai World Cup where he went last year, ran 10th. They're taking a little lower hanging fruit, not going to Dubai with Krupe this year. They're headed to the Excelsior for 150 G's. Who do you like in this particular race, Scott?
Well, I mean, I think the 2-1 morning line favorite, Batten Down, merits respect. He's kept good company, and he had really very little chance in the Grade 3 mine shaft today where inside speed was dominant. But I went to a horse that I think I can trust more at the moment over this racetrack at 1.25 miles. Just keeps getting better, and that's number 8, Mazmac, the second choice here for Richard Dutrow Jr. 4 for 5 over the surface. That's all 4 of his career wins, and they've come in his last 5 starts. He just kept coming last time out and looks like a horse that's going to get another very favorable trip. Manny Franco was aboard last time. I think he's going to have the speed to his inside with Phileas Fogg and Mama's Gold. So I'm not worried about, leaving too much to do late. Hopefully he can stand the class test of taking on some of these runners, Krupe and Batten Down, who've kept better company throughout their career.
I like undercard races for trainers who have the big horse in the big race. Rick Dutrow, I think, has got the big horse for the Wood. And a lot of times they have horses that are just absolutely primed for the undercard as well. Mazmac could fit into that bill. Let's take a look at his allowance win last time. It could spring him to the Excelsior.
And Mazmac is challenging. Mama's Gold is very game, but Mazmac is taking the lead. Mazmac is trying to kick away. Mama's Gold continues to fight on. A 16th left to go. Classic Catch is taken third. Mazmac center the racetrack and clear, and Mazmac gives your winner. Mazmac will win it. Mama's Gold. Then came Classic Catch.
I didn't even realize I was making a pun there, springing from it to the Excelsior. But if you're a Saratoga fan and the Excelsior springs up there, I wasn't trying to be cute. That actually just came out the wrong way and ended up being a bad pun. Batten Down, you mentioned in here. We talked about Blue Hen Mares already. Puka, with what she's done. Close hatches. As good of a race mare she was, she's a better brood mare. And she's got Batten Down with a chance here for the second start of the year to have a really good 4-year-old campaign. This was kind of a late blooming horse who didn't make the stakes until the Ohio Derby in June. A little bit of an underachiever at the beginning of her career. Took a little while to get going, or he took a little while to get going. But Batten Down ended up having a pretty decent 3-year-old season. It could be a good 4-year-old for Bill Mott. One to keep an eye on there. The Excelsior, race number 11, over 1.25 miles, Saturday at the Big A. Now let's go to the feature race at Aqueduct Saturday, the Wood Memorial. This race is a Grade 2, $750,000 prep towards the Kentucky Derby. 100 qualifying points on the line. Big field in here. 12 entered, but we're down to 11, and it's a big one that's the minus right now. Andy Serling reported last night that Hill Road will scratch after spiking a fever. So we're not going to have the Chad Brown trainee who's coming off a third-place finish in the Tampa Bay Derby. Hill Road absolutely would have been a win contender in here, I think, Scott.
Very disappointing scratch for me. Obviously, I don't want to wager on a horse that spiked a fever, but assuming he was healthy, it was my favorite play of the Saturday slate, especially the Triple Crown prep races. I think it changes the way you have to look at this race. I think also the scratch of long shot number 9, Beer Claw Necklace, who I hate to say that I don't know who reported it. It might have been Mike Welsh. Since it was Safi Joseph, but that takes some of the speed out of the race. And one of the reasons I thought Hill Road was such a good play was because of that speed. Now, I still think there's plenty signed on, but it does make a horse like Rodriguez, the morning line favorite, likelier maybe to be able to handle the inside speed trip. But to me, it was Captain Cook, who I think is going to get the right trip in here. You mentioned the Richard Dutrow factor. I guess I'm hoping for a Dutrow double in the Wood Memorial. This horse did very well last time. This is by far the toughest field he'll face, Jeremy, but I think he might be up for the task.
Yeah, this is the horse who was privately sold in the fall on a dispersal sale. St. Elias Stable, Vinny Viola and his wife. who've had much success, Kentucky Derby winning connections. Captain Cook was given the Dutrow and then in the fall, and then really came out with a nice maiden win that kind of flew under my radar a bit. I didn't give a lot of credence to that maiden win when it first happened as putting this horse on my radar. So when he got to the Withers Stakes, I thought, let's see what he's got. I thought he came away that race establishing a pretty nice reputation. I think he's one of the ones towards
and
the Kentucky
now
Derby.
tells Captain Cook to go because Surfside Moon was ready to pounce on the grandstand side. Captain Cook is showing more, and Captain Cook is now up by a length and a half. Surfside Moon continues to give game chase. Omaha is running on for third. Here is Captain Cook with the 16th left to go. Captain Cook is up by 2. Surfside Moon is second, but Captain Cook wins the Withers. Captain Cook wins it over Surfside Moon, Omaha.
He's by practical joke, and you're going to say 1 turn, but he's already won at the 1 1/8 in the Withers, and that was a pretty good effort to go as strong as he did on the back end of that race. They came home actually very well on that race for being February the 1st. I mean, he came home as well in that race as you're expecting for the Wood or some of these prep races that we've seen around the country at a 1 1/8, and he did it in February. So if he has any move forward in him at all, he's going to be one of the better finishers in this crop. You think maybe that pedigree with the Indian Charlie on the bottom, but like, the third dam here is Birdtown, the outstanding winner of the Kentucky Oaks. So there's actually a little more pedigree here than just the first line or two might suggest. I think he's got a really good shot not only to win the Wood, but to go to Churchill Downs and be a legitimate win contender. If he wins this race, I think he's one of the top 4 or 5 horses towards the Derby, and I think he's got a real chance in there. Captain Cook, great post position here in the Wood. He's got to get by this step, but he's planned. The plan for him has been perfect because when you win the Withers, you got to skip the Gotham. You don't go back to 1 turn and then try to stretch back out and go 2 turns. So he's had that long time between races, which I think is beneficial. We saw it work with Tappan Street when he had the long break, not running in the Fountain of Youth and going from the early prep to the third prep. You run in races 1 and 3 in the series, not 1, 2, and 3 or 2 and 3. And I think he's just planned out perfectly by Dutrow to peak in this race. And he benefits from there not being any real unknown factors in here. The horses who are coming up, we kind of know who they are. You know who Rodriguez is. You know who Sand Devil is at this point. Maybe Grande's a horse who's got a little bit of mystery to him. He's 2 for 2 down at Gulfstream Park, but he's a horse who I don't think has been finishing that strong on the back of his races. I think he's been a benefit of some fields that just weren't up to his level. Jimmy's Daly's, the horse who ran second to him last time, came back and did absolutely nothing, no factor in the Florida Derby. So I think Grande's the underlay in this race. He might be the mystery because he's 2 for 2 from Florida, but I don't think he's that good. I think we know what Rodriguez is and we know what Sand Devil is, who should be the 2 main challengers to Captain Cook.
Well, the one thing with Rodriguez is you could definitely make the case. 1, the blinkers off is a good thing. I know he's had him on all 4 starts, trainer Bob Baffert, 248 start sample size, 32% blinkers off, 66% in the money. So positive move, maybe with Bob and a lot of other top trainers. It means the horses are relaxing better in the mornings, but that doesn't mean he's not going to show speed. So potentially Rodriguez will show us a new face, not having to take on his stablemates and being ridden potentially more aggressively out of the gate. But I'm with you otherwise. I think Grande is the, second tier horse for Pletcher in his stables. Rapoli, obviously, their main horse. Oh my gosh, the name is mistaking me. The horse that Disruptor didn't work out for them. So they're hopeful, but yeah, I think this is a fun field. It came up like a good handicapping puzzle, but I think it's Captain Cook's to lose without Hill Road in here.
Yeah, Rodriguez and Captain Cook. I mean, those are the 2 scenarios that I can see in this race, and anybody else to me would be a major surprise in the Wood Memorial. Baffert Dutrow potentially in the Wood Memorial. That'll be something when they get to Louisville. That's all I can say for that. But it might be the exacta for sure in the Wood Memorial coming up on Saturday. Now, we did say earlier about the change of schedule at Keeneland this weekend. No racing Friday, no racing Saturday. Still raining in Lexington as we speak. So, look, Sunday's card is scheduled to be opening day. We'll see if they get that one off. That is the plan to run on Sunday at this point in time as we record the podcast Friday afternoon. But then that means Monday is the Ashland, and Tuesday would be the Bluegrass Stakes. And Scott, just want to get a little bit of thoughts on the Bluegrass before we say goodbye here. We'll have some extra handicapping for those cards at expressbet.com and at news.first.com early in the week with the Monday, Tuesday. We'll be producing some content for those races at that time. But a quick look ahead to the Bluegrass Stakes. River Thames in there, Burnham Square, Owen Almighty, East Avenue looking to bounce back, Chancer McPatrick, Admiral Dennis, and Render Judgment, the field of 7 in there. It's a rematch of the Tampa Bay Derby in some respects, where Owen Almighty and his rival Chancer McPatrick get a chance to renew acquaintances. Let's look at the Tampa Bay Derby, and then I'll get your early thought on the Bluegrass.
Owen Almighty, Irad Ortiz Jr., Bradeur, Jose Ortiz, brothers at war past the 3/8 pole. They're a length and a half in front of Chancer McPatrick, who's biding his time toward the inside. Filoso starting to launch up on the outside of Patch Adams. They're racing together out wide. Chancer McPatrick going to need a seam. Owen Almighty brings him around to the top of the stretch. Brodeur, Patch Adams 3 wide. Filoso on the far outside. Chancer McPatrick still waiting for that seam to arrive as Owen Almighty turns him in. Owen Almighty to the 8th pole, 2 lengths in front of Chancer McPatrick, who tries to come after that one, but Owen Almighty's 3 lengths in front. Chancer McPatrick, a final 16th. Hill Road up the inside. It's Owen Almighty in front. Owen Almighty by 4. Owen, the all-powerful Owen Almighty, wins the Tampa Bay Derby. Chancer McPatrick was second.
Easy pace, but he flew home late, and of course that compromised maybe the chances from off the pace of Chancer McPatrick. He was a little closer to the pace that day than what we saw as a 2-year-old. He had blinkers on that day, Chancer McPatrick, for the first time. Chad keeps the blinkers on for the Bluegrass. Do you like the Tampa horses, or are you going to go somewhere else in the Bluegrass without tipping your hand too much this early?
You know, I think the Tampa horses are legitimate, but I think I'm leaning towards a horse that I'm hoping maybe gets overlooked, because I think this is an evenly matched field where I think it's kind of the second tier of horses under the, below the top ones that we talked about at Santa Anita, maybe a couple of others. Mm-hmm. I think Burnham Square, though, might get overlooked in the wagering, and I think maybe he ran a little better than it looks. He looked flat last time. I'm a Thoroughgraph guy. He paired his top in the race. If I'm counting on the numbers, I think he's got to move forward here. And I like the move to Brian Hernandez Jr. here. He's a main man for Ian Wilson, with him thoroughbreds over the years. He's just going to angle over, save ground. He'll need some pace to run at. But I think Burnham Square makes for an interesting key in the first and second spots if he gets overlooked like maybe I expect him to.
All right. We'll talk much more about the Bluegrass as we get closer to Tuesday's main event, the Melbourne Cup of Lexington, Kentucky on a Tuesday. We look forward to that. Kentucky Derby Future Wager again closes, I believe, 4 o'clock, something like that, on Saturday. Be sure to check Express Bet, First Bet, get your wagers in before the big prep races run on Saturday. So an earlier closing time for this final Kentucky Derby Future Wager if you want to play that. Early start in Dubai just after 8:30 in the morning on Saturday, so be sure to check that action out. Dustin Fabian's got some handicapping for us on the Dubai card on Saturday morning, so check out his analysis of those major races. And remember, when you bet with First Bet Express Bet for Dubai World Cup Day, bet $100 on that card from Maidan, get 10 back, so basically a 10% rebate on your first $100 when you play Dubai World Cup Day, so be sure to do that. And then go into the evening. We've got some picks from Johnny Burke and his personal ratings that he puts together for the Hong Kong racing. We're going to debut them. That's in our blog section right now. So check out Johnny's analysis for the Hong Kong racing late Saturday night into Sunday morning. Go from Dubai at 8 a.m. to Hong Kong and 4 a.m. or however late it gets for the final race on the card there. Who needs sleep this time of year? And at Keeneland, we are about to start 8 consecutive days of racing. If Saturday's or Sunday's card gets off as scheduled, they'll run Sunday through Sunday without a break. There's no rest this time of year, Mr. Shapiro. We are going to be having some fun over the next several weeks between now and Preakness and Belmont. Really, there's a time to rest. It's called the middle of June.
No doubt, as horse players and those in the industry, we know this well, and we're ready to jump back in this year. Excited, when we're recording this would normally be opening day, almost ready to break from the gate to the opener. But, for someone like me, Tuesday and Monday for these big races plays absolutely fine. Sorry to those of you that maybe don't agree.
We will be back on Tuesday with our It's Official podcast, recapping the weekend's action. Also going to put together some special content for those Keeneland cards on Monday and Tuesday, so be sure to check those out. On behalf of everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, on behalf of Jeff Siegel, hope to have him back soon, and my partner today, Scott Shapiro, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great weekend. Enjoy all the action from no matter where in the world you are watching them run this weekend. Good luck, everybody.